I had thought about starting this off with the hot pepper challenge.
You know what? I was going to suggest that in the pre-show. It would have been good, an opener, right? You set the stage with that, and then it's all downhill from there.
I wasn't going to let you know. I was going to fit the hot pepper challenge video to your screen, so I'd be sitting here and just watching it. Yeah, and then we'd cut it.
Yeah, we show people that, and at work, and it always blows their mind.
It does. Like, everybody loves it.
What the hell is this?
Does anybody have a link to the hot pepper challenge that Mr. Denommenator did? Throw that in chat. It's great. It's a good thing to see.
But first, I'm going to eat this habanero pepper, and for extra measure, I'm going to sprinkle 3 drops of ghost pepper extract on top. Bottoms up. Oh my God. Okay. Oh my God. There is a ton of content in ZMR and more to come. We are committed to a monthly update schedule with ZMR that will see new items, equipment, weapons, and even new game modes added to the game on a monthly basis.
It's got a lot of views by now and a lot of comments, which are quite humorous. Mostly about like my beating heart.
Yeah, by the end there, man, you were losing it. Your ad lib at the end was great. Your improvs, perfect.
You can literally hear my heart beating. No joke. And hey, that was all real.
It was all real.
Faking that. Yeah. I thought I was strong man.
Yeah.
Not so much. It was only a habanero.
It was a habanero and 3 drops of ghost pepper juice.
Yeah.
That was probably a mistake.
That stuff, though, we tried it. There's also the behind-the-scenes video on YouTube with Bob, and everybody tried that stuff, and it was hot, but it didn't linger. It went away quickly.
Oh, I remember we were trying to get you to go home. It was like, do you need the rest of the day?
No, there's work to do.
There was work to do. He went right back to work. Hot pepper challenge and went right back to work.
I guess I was working on, ZMR launch, right? It was like promoting closed beta.
So, as I've been saying, we got Denommenator here, one of my best buds, guy I really love. Another Canadian. We've done 2 Canadians in a row now. This is kind of crazy. He moved to Seattle to work at EME, and he's wrestled Lucha for a minute. Now, I come from West Texas, so I kind of knew what Lucha was. I had no idea there was Lucha in Seattle. Lucha is Lucha Libre, Mexican wrestling, all themed up, face masks, crazy, over the top, jumping over rings, nutty stuff. Super fun if you can get by and see some. If you got it locally, go do it. If you can find it online, amazing. Had no idea Mr. Denommenator was doing that. Told us about it. Got to go to a couple of them. Great times. This whole pandemic thing kind of sucks for that because we're not crowding into the small tiny room to go see this anymore, but hopefully when this eases up, I'm in.
Yeah, you're not crowded into that little basement gym, which is like honestly the perfect setting for that.
It is the perfect setting. Yeah,
it is exactly what you would think. It's like wrestling in a basement essentially. The roof was too low, right? People were always like, it would always look like somebody's gonna hit the rafters and they're jumping off the top rope. You said you weren't aware of it in Seattle, which is funny because it was literally down the street from your house, right?
Yeah.
And so you had no trouble coming out to those things. That was a good time. But in truth, I didn't actually wrestle at all. I trained for maybe almost a year in the lead up to TERA console's launch, and then that got hot and heavy and I stopped, but maybe that's just an excuse. But it was a good time. It was hard at first, especially. You run the ropes, and even that, like something so simple, like I would have lines on my back and stuff, and you get slapped in the chest, and that's pretty fierce. I had a gimmick. I was getting ready, so I was getting close to like having a match, and it was true Mexican wrestling, and they go get you a costume made, a mask and a leotard. It's a rite of passage, and so I had a gimmick all sorted out. It was like I was Canadian. Well, I am Canadian, and it was El Leñador, which apparently translates to the lumberjack because I had a big beard at the time. I was gonna wear a red leotard, and I was gonna wear black and red flannel over it with the sleeves cut off, of course. And I was going to wear like a goalie-inspired luchador mask. It was going to be pretty good. And I was going to carry around a log, essentially, and it would be like my foreign object and hit people with it because I was a luchador.
Would this be like would you have to go get like a foam log made somewhere, or would you literally have a log?
No. I think it would be real for sure. Just grab one like outside somewhere. It's Northwest.
That would be amazing to see. I'd be down. But you also told me that you had some little networking experiences there. You met other people in the industry also doing lucha, right?
Yeah, there was one guy who I think worked for Penny Arcade actually for a bit.
That's nuts.
Which is wild. And then another guy worked at Microsoft, but not on Xbox. But it was a good crew. If you're ever in Seattle, go check them out. Oh man, what were they even called? Do you remember? The
Lucha Volcanica?
Yeah, LV, right? Lucha Libre Volcanic.
On Facebook. So go search Facebook for Seattle Lucha Volcanica. You'll find it. They were doing shows the last Saturday of every month, I think. Who knows what's happening now? It may have all folded. I don't know.
I hope not, really. But yeah, I can't think that this has been very, very good for their business, unfortunately. And I wonder if they even train.
Yeah.
It
could be the worst case. I haven't gone and checked because I didn't want to read the bad news. Once this is all over, I want the good news to start coming back in. I don't want to know that some of that good news won't be coming.
Yeah, that's unfortunate reality. I think I don't want to talk about this for too long, but like concert promoters and stuff really took it hard, or venues, that type of thing.
Yep. So
I don't know that those are all going to come back in Seattle, which is unfortunate because the scene there is so strong.
True. But the one thing that has been good is we've had plenty of time to play games. Since we have a shared favorite pastime of doing that. I haven't done this before in previous interviews. I don't know why I didn't. One of the core things of EME was we were all gamers, and we wanted to make sure we were approachable as gamers. We communicated with our communities as gamers and shared those experiences. And the office was always very, very active talking about games, playing games together. So let's do a new part that I'll do with all the other interviews I do from here on out. Let's go over your gamer cred. What are you playing right now? What games have you been playing the last couple of weeks?
There's been a lot of, I think, good releases the last few weeks. Or maybe since, over the summer, I started playing Ghost of Tsushima, and maybe I'm a little late to the party on that, but that's a cool game out of Sucker Punch in Seattle, who as a studio I like. And that game, I think, is a tremendous achievement for them. Picked up Tony Hawk, the remake, because I'm an old man like you. And that's been a fun nostalgia trip. A big one, a couple big ones that came out just last week. Mario All-Stars, which is a re-release collection. And Spelunky 2, which I've been waiting for a while. I love Spelunky 1. It's one of my favorite games. I'm big into roguelikes, as you know.
You've got me into some roguelikes. I knew about Binding of Isaac beforehand, hadn't really played. What is the game that you and Missouri were always playing?
Nuclear
Throne. I started playing that. I can't do bullet hell for shit, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and that kind of opened me up to some other roguelikes.
Yeah, that game's great, and that was the answer to Radio G's question there. It's what's my favorite game? That's got to be one of them. Sad thing happened recently. That studio called it quits. Vlambeer.
No way.
From the Netherlands. Yeah, not a few weeks ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's two guys, and they just were like, you know what, at this point in our lives, I guess this is it, which is sad. They have one more game coming out. It's called, I can't even remember, something Ultra Bugs. But yeah, Nuclear Throne, hell of a game. And that studio is awesome. If you've never played their games, some of their other work is Luftrausers, which is a flying shooter. It's on Steam. And Ridiculous Fishing on iOS and Android. And Super Crate Box, which is free on Steam as well, as a game called Gun Gods, which is a old school retro style FPS in the spirit of something like Doom. What else have I been playing? I've been playing Spellbreak with you. That's been a good time, eh?
I am loving Spellbreak. I am terrible at battle royales, but this game isn't as bad. I think I might have told the story a little bit on the stream, but you and I tried playing PUBG for a bit. There was a bit. And
yeah, that bit was actually like 40 hours.
Probably.
That's what's in my Steam account, yeah. But I don't think we got any better in that whole time.
We didn't. There is an instance that is just solid in my brain where I'm running, you're hiding behind a tree. I don't know if I ever actually made it to cover, but I'm downed and I'm looking over at you and I'm like, hey, come get me up. I go, I watched you get shot in the head. I'm like, it's great. It was gross or something like that.
Yeah,
you just
like
watched me bleed out. Like no coming over.
I didn't watch it on purpose. It just happened, you know?
Yeah. That's my experience with battle royales. I'm running around. We may spend 30 minutes looting, and then I'm going to get headshot. A one shot, one kill. I'm done. And that was that experience, and I'm now going back to the lobby. At least with Spellbreak, the fights take longer for the most part. I enjoy it much better.
Well, and the ramp up, like the gear phase is much shorter, right?
Yeah, there's not as many options. You don't have to menu as much. Like getting good at a battle royale and menuing. Oh God, I don't want to do it. Spellbreak is very, very intuitive, very good.
I think all of the games that have come since PUBG have ironed that out, right? Like that's not that fun unless you're like, into that kind of thing, inventory management, like, playing with the grid or whatever.
I've seen it getting more ridiculous. I was watching Summit 1G play DayZ the other day, and he was having some people that are hardcore that had been playing it because he hasn't been playing it for a while. They were giving him tips, and it was like cook chicken and then put chicken down your pants because it keeps you warm. I'm like, what the hell? This is intentional. You're cooking chicken and stuffing it in your trousers. Why?
That's DayZ, yeah. I remember when that first came out, there were stories online about like holding the guns to somebody's head and like starving them to death and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or like feeding them stuff that'll kill you or whatever.
Too much. Yeah. I remember running around with windshields. I had car windshields. I'm like, this is not going to be useful, but I got something. I looted something. I'm keeping it. It's mine now. And you just die, and you find people all over the place. Like this dude died with an empty gas tank and a windshield. You're like, great for them.
That game really started it all. And that came out in 2012 when I first started working at NMAS, and it was like a hype thing for a minute.
Yeah, just an Arma mod, and then moved to a standalone.
Mm-hmm. But then it took forever to come out. I feel like they kind of botched it.
Yeah, maybe a little, yeah. And it was always really, really difficult because if you wanted to play with your friends, who knows where you're spawning? You spawn with nothing. You could spawn like several times before you ever found your friends. And then it was like, I can never log off. Yeah. My stash is going to be stolen.
Sound Waffles is right. The standalone version was in development hell. I don't even know if it is 1.0 yet, honestly. That's how long it's been.
I'm not sure. I don't think I'll go back. It was far too complicated for me. Spellbreak is more my area, my level of difficulty.
I like Spellbreak, but I think it's pretty twitchy, honestly. It's more akin to something like Counter-Strike. I know that's like maybe pretty far away in terms of subject matter, but I mean, it relies on twitch aim, right? And fast tracking and movement more so than I think, some other shooters.
So first games, where did you begin?
Yeah. When I was growing up, my dad had a ColecoVision, so we didn't have an Atari, we had a ColecoVision. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. But it was known for being, like it provided the most arcade-accurate ports to home. So it had games like Donkey Kong and Frogger, and I played that when I was a kid. It had a like jank-ass like keypad instead of a controller.
It did. It was the weirdest peripheral ever.
Yeah. I like this game called Venture, and I don't know, I have like maybe light ambitions to like remake that game one day in like a modern style. It was a good game. It's not Adventure, which is a different game. It's called Venture. Look it up. It's cool. It's like maybe a predecessor to something like the original Legend of Zelda. Top-down view, a little bit of dungeon crawling, collecting treasure. And then, I had an NES, of course. I guess, I was kind of a masochist from day one. I had games like Double Dragon and Ninja Gaiden 2. My dad bought me and like brought it home from Toys R Us or whatever. He's like, here, try this out. And it was so hard. Like
it was, yeah.
I think he bought it for him probably.
I was more the Kung Fu game than the Ninja Gaiden. Like that was like, oh my God, I'll stick with Kung Fu.
That was like the 1v1 game, right?
No, it was just a side scroller, but really simple. You had you could kick up, kick down.
Platformer.
Yeah, it was nice. It wasn't complicated. You didn't have to worry about jumping too much. Didn't have to be as well coordinated in your play.
Yeah, it's like the dude in the white gi or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
His name was Kevin or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, spot on. I'm sure his name was Kevin in Japan when they made it too.
Probably, yeah. That's how difficult my games were. Double Dragon was amazing though. I remember that series. Contra, I absolutely loved Contra. I never beat Contra. I never got to the end of that.
I beat Contra with a buddy in college, though. That's how long it took me to come around to that. And then I beat Contra 4 on DS, which is a hell of a hard game, but it's a good one too. It uses like the 2 screens and you're jumping back and forth between them. But yeah, Contra is totally my jam. I got that Genesis Mini that they put out last year, and Contra Hardcore is on there. I've never beat that game, so I've been playing that lately.
You know what game I go back to every once in a while, and I'm so happy that they released the NES. I could have got it on an emulator, but Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, that's good too.
I didn't actually have the game. It was always at like the 7-Eleven by my house had Ghosts and Goblins. I would go up there, and I would just quarter after quarter after quarter and never make it past the first stage.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's the worst game to have in an arcade for a quarter. Like that, you're not doing it.
Quarter muncher.
Yeah, it was awful.
If anyone watching likes retro games, you check out a show called Game Center CX. It's a Japanese show with a comedian who plays games, and he's not very good. Well, he gets good, but he's not very good, and it's just like his trials and tribulations of trying to beat old games. It's a good show. It's on YouTube, a few episodes.
So what games hooked you? What did you play with at the beginning that's still there, you reference?
We talked about Nuclear Throne. I still play that to this day, and Spelunky. I think a big influence is like Jet Set Radio and just the style and music of that game. I still think is really cool. Again, I have like a game design in my head for a modern version of that. Although somebody's going to beat me to that. There's a bunch of like similar games coming out or have come out. Hideo Kojima, yeah, I played Metal Gear 1, but I'm not a hardcore Hideo Kojima fan. Sorry, I'm talking to chat here. I remember you
geeked out once. You sent me the soundtrack to Jet Set Radio. Like it released or something. Yeah. You're like, yo, man. And you geeked out all about it.
Well, what it is, it's still live, actually. It's jetsetradio.live. It's just a website you go to, and they play songs from the soundtrack, but also inspired by the soundtrack, and there's a visualizer. It's pretty dope.
I love that. That's one of the things I absolutely love about you. Your love for these indies, your love for, like, you have this extreme passion for all these games and these little niche things that me as a casual corporate gamer, I don't get too deep into.
These are like, yeah, maybe they're a bit of deep pulls, right? They're like showing my age a little bit, but these are the games that I think inspired me to perhaps work in games. Like, hey, this is a cool medium. I like Earthbound's probably my favorite RPG, which is like the most hipster answer. And then some of my favorite games, like on an artistic level, are like the Team Eco games. So another, again, pretentious shit, but excuse me, Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Last Guardian. I like that team. They got a new game coming out, apparently, but they always take their time. Like Hotline Miami. It's got a thumping soundtrack. That's good. I like indie games of that ilk, pretty much. So and online shooters. I play like Overwatch and been playing Warzone and Spellbreak with you.
Yeah, I try to play with you guys every once in a while, but I'm just not at that level of competition. Or should I have said competency instead of competition? I don't know. They're interchangeable in this line.
Yeah, I'm not in any capacity competitive in that game. It's way more accessible than something like PUBG, though. I would say that.
True. So what are you hyped about? What's coming up?
I got my Houseu shirt on. Halloween's coming. I'm all about Halloween. I love Halloween. When we were working at NMAS, doing the Halloween event was always fun, even if it was maybe somewhat limited, I'll say. But that was always my favorite time of year, was making that stuff. We'll get to that stuff later, though. But yeah, Halloween I'm hyped about. Left 4 Dead dropped that community update today.
Oh, that was today.
Just came out today. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was coming out today. I just saw. And like, it's amazing that game, after whatever 10 years, like the concurrency is like up through the roof now. It's like from 12 to 50K. So I'm gonna check that out this weekend. I think it's free this weekend if you want to check it out, or it's like $2 to buy it. Yeah, it's an old game, but that's going to be a nostalgia trip. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good. Sure, become a variety streamer. That's what I'm telling them. And actually, that leads me to like I was going to say, like looking forward to seeing your stream grow and your ambitions surrounding it.
Yeah, if you have a Twitch Prime sub, you feel free to throw those Twitch Primes out, and I'll buy absolutely ridiculous things I don't need. Like everybody keeps saying my audio is a little bit low. Well, I'll buy a Go XLR and a brand new mic and get dumb. We'll just get stupid. Throw money at the channel.
Don't you need like a lapel mic? Isn't that a thing?
Would that work with the beard? I'm thinking like this is too thick, too robust a pop filter to get through a lapel mic.
You gotta put it in the beard.
That could happen. But maybe that builds up a lot of static, and I just sound like I'm chewing on electricity all night. All the static buildup. I have to de-static the beard before implementing the lapel mic into it. And then, like 5-6 streams later, I realized like I've lost a couple of lapel mics in the beard, and I'm pulling them out randomly. Like that was from Saturday. I don't know. Might not be worth.
Sarah Monin in chat said Back for Blood, which is the new game from Turtle Rock. It's like a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor. It's coming out, I think, next year. One to watch for.
Oh.
Eric Andre, new season's coming out at the end of October. That's going to be good, I think. It's been a while.
Did you see his Hot Ones episode?
Yeah, it was good.
He didn't make it. He's the first person.
He's dying.
Yeah, it was over. He made it like he wasn't even that close to the end. He was like on the 7th one.
Which is like kind of funny, like that, like given his shtick,
Yeah, and he's done it before.
Did you go? Oh no, it wasn't you. I was gonna say, did you go see that show with me in Seattle? But
I did. I was there.
Oh, you did. You saw the one in Pike what's it called?
Showbox.
Showbox.
Yeah. I had seen the little clips of his interviews, but I hadn't been an Eric Andre watcher. That show was absolutely nuts. He's running around picking up the big, 55-gallon trash barrels from the bar and pouring them on people. Great. It was an insane show.
Yeah, it was great.
I'd go to another one of those. Yeah,
throwing milk on the crowd, and
I would easily say I am an Eric Andre, Hannibal Buress fan now. Like those two dudes.
Do you remember when we were waiting outside in line and there was like people with all that ranch dressing and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, that was funny.
How did you find your way to EME? What brought your amazingness to EME?
It was like pure luck, actually. That's a good story. You guys, there was an HR recruiter at NMass. She was really a great person. I know her name. I don't know if I should say her name was Melinda. Yeah.
Wasn't Starbird or something like that? What did we all call her?
She's great, and she reached out to me on LinkedIn. This was like, I don't know, what, 2011.
Mm-hmm. You were still very deep into your punk phase?
No, I had graduated that.
Oh.
Maybe I was goth phase. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, they were looking for like a director of something, well beyond my credentials. And she's like, do you know someone for this position? Which is kind of weird, right? Like for someone to reach out to you and be like, do you know somebody for this? I don't know. It struck me as strange. But I was like, of course. I'm like, yeah, me. And I gave her my resume, And it was kind of a gag. I didn't really expect anything to come of it. And she came back to me and she's like, well, of course, you're not qualified for this position, but we like your experience anyways. And she's like, so why don't you hop on the phone for an interview? So I had an interview with the marketing director at the time. I used to work on a game called Crossfire. It's like very famous in China. It's the biggest game, or it was at the time. There's an Xbox game coming out next year. I'm sure people are aware. Anyways, that was a free-to-play game. And so I helped launch that game in North America. And it was among the first free-to-play games. Like stuff like MapleStory came before it, Combat Arms. So I worked on that game, and it was pretty successful, which at the time I was playing this thing, I'm like, this game sucks. Like, it's like a Counter-Strike clone, It didn't suck. Like, mechanically it was sound. It was a fun game to play, and I played it quite a bit, even just like for fun outside of work. But in the competitive market, I'm like, this is never going to fly. Like, this game is like a Counter-Strike clone. But, I underestimated the power of free. Like, that's truly powerful, especially at that time when there were no free games. It's not like you can go play Counter-Strike Go or something, like a game of like really, really high quality for free. Yeah, so that helped the game to be successful, and I was very fortunate I got in on the ground floor of like free to play. So I think that made me an appealing candidate for a position there, and I guess the rest is history. I went out there, interviewed, tried to talk a big game. Like, I work on the biggest game you've never heard of. That was my opening line. I still remember. And man, little did I know where it would lead.
So where did it lead? What did you come in? What was your title? What was the team like?
I joined the marketing team. I was like digital marketing manager. I was tasked to, the company had very grand ambitions around the TERA's original launch, subscription launch. And rightfully so. It was a great game, and I think innovative at the time for its combat, and graphically it was like in the MMO genre, I think unsurpassed. My first project was to work on this like automated email system. So when you reach certain points in the game, it would email you to like give you some context around where you're at in the story, and give you a little snippet of like, well, here's your progress so far. And it had some interesting little stats in it, like, you've traveled this much distance, or you've killed this many BAMs. And that was fun. I had never done anything like that before, and I very much, in my way, just like figured it out, right? Kind of like TERA console. And I got to work with a very esteemed engineer on that, which was maybe the start of a trend, because I felt like paired up with a really good engineer that helped to really make the magic happen. I was just like the face, I guess. So that was an honor, honestly, and we launched that system. I don't think it remained live for very long, because by the time we got to it, by the time it got out the door, we were already looking at like, well, we got to go free to play. So I started in marketing, which was fun. I ran like the ad campaigns that supported the launch of TERA, maybe a little bit of stuff on the website and whatnot. And then for free-to-play launch, I transitioned to like monetization focus. I set up the store for launch alongside some help from some folks at Bluehole. And then I ran the store for about, 18 months, which was a great time. I really enjoyed that. It was fun. Just figuring out like what's the best way to position and promote these zany weapon skins, and I had I enjoyed working with the writers to name them. You guys were talking about, JD and Scott the other day, about like the amazing flavor text, and both those gentlemen contributed to ZMR's weapon names and descriptions as well. And I always got a kick out of those. I loved doing that stuff. Yeah, weird stuff like, well, we're going to send you an email. I remember, like, I did the emails, right? And we were sending you an email about the new product we launched. It's a pet or something. And I'm like, yo, check this out. I put a GIF in the email. And at the time, that was, like, mind-blowing, which is funny. So I did that for a while. And then the time came for our second title. And they were looking for a producer to run it. And I approached my then boss, the great Noxer, and I said, "Hey, man, should I consider going out for this role?" And he's like, "Yeah, heck yeah." I had the Crossfire experience; it was somewhat applicable, and I got it. I think there were a couple like external candidates, but that was a real challenge. I hadn't been a producer before, so I kind of I had to figure it out. But I was lucky to have Noxer there in my corner. But that was a true challenge, because that game was developed in China, right? Mm-hmm. By a subsidiary of Epic Games. So it was based on Gears of War, which I don't think, you look at it and it's clear as day, but I don't think a lot of people knew that there was that connective tissue there.
Yeah, it had a very strong Gears of War feel, which made the game super fun to play.
Well, that studio, Yingpei, actually contributed to the development of Gears of War. They were like the outsourced studio. They provided art, so that's why they looked similar. And that was a great game, but I think, there were a lot of, many reasons why perhaps it wasn't as successful as it could have been. Among them, I think, the business model was very, maybe of Chinese origin, timed weapons, and I think maybe I was too green at the time to, make the changes that really needed to happen to make that game successful here. I got there eventually. It took me maybe 8 months with the Game of Drones update. Where I finally, I think, got it right. But Yeah, that was a fun experience. We did so many like fun themed updates. I think at that time we really established like how do we market and promote an update, right? And I think some of that stuff later got applied to TERA in updates like class updates and stuff like that. Like here's everything we do, and we're trying to roll out an update, which was fun. And that was one of my favorite parts of the job. Like I live for that stuff, like, oh, here's this new content. And you were heavily involved with it in this, it's like, all right, we got this build, let's dig into it, let's see what's in here. It's like a Pandora's box, truly, because you never know what you're going to get. Could be good, could be bad, and you got to kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
and then
documentation isn't that descriptive.
Or it's in another language. And you sort it out the best you can. I always got a kick out of that. It was a true challenge, but it's always fun to put a name and a brand on that stuff, and a look and feel, and kind of we always gave it our own. We put our name on it, right? Like we gave it our own personal touch, and that was really good. I to this day, I think there's something to be said of like working within certain confines, certain restrictions, and that was at the heart of what we did. In fact, I'd say that extends to like east to west publishing in a certain sense, right? You take what you're given, but then you put your own spin on it. Yeah, I enjoyed that part of the job. Like we imbued a sense of authorship, and Scott was a big part of that. You were as well. Yeah, that was great stuff. And the marketing team, you had Josh on, like those guys. They actually they did they were the external presence for those updates, right? I didn't. I helped, I advised, but that was all them, all their work.
So I think
that stuff's fun, and Halloween was the height of it. I always loved Halloween. Do something crazy.
What was fun about the Halloween event? Why'd you like that so much?
Halloween was one of the first events we deployed in TERA. I don't know if you remember. I think after we did the Battlegrounds update, which Scott talked about, I think Halloween was the second piece of big content that we deployed. And I think that was also the first loot box that went into TERA, was this Halloween loot box that was a reward in the event. I don't think we did sell it, I think, but it had stuff like the wolf mask. Remember that stuff? Mm-hmm. All that weird stuff? The bone mask. That was like the first set of cosmetic items in TERA, apart from stuff like the nightmare mount and Sleipnir. And yeah, well, so my hand in the first Halloween update, the one thing I added was, hey, if you log in during this event, you get something for free. And that was something I always tried to maintain, because it's like that reason to log in and just check out the new stuff we have on offer. And Josh and I and the marketing team, actually, you know what? I didn't have that much a hand in the marketing at the time. He did that Halloween page, the very first Masquerade Mayhem or whatever it was called. And that was fun. And Minea had her little costume party in the game. I remember that being a big hit among the community. Yeah, I know. Halloween and video games, they just go well together. And for an MMO or a game as a service, it's an opportunity to get a little wacky. And I like that. And then I also like spooky stuff too. So when ZMR came around, like we went all out. Josh put like a new opening cutscene in the game. And we had a lot of good content for that.
What are other memorable things you did?
I prepared a little list. I think Extra Life is a big one. That was always fun. If I wasn't on screen for a significant amount of time, I was in the background doing giveaways, or I was watching at home. I always enjoyed that, and like the struggle to stay awake and like being at the office so late, which like at the time was a novelty, but later became maybe perhaps too regular. Yeah, that was always a great time, with the exception of maybe one year where it went off the rails in a big way. You may recall in the lobby.
I think a great example of spending too much time working is Black Friday Golden Gift Box.
Yeah, well, actually, that's yeah. I actually, so among maybe one of my most memorable things is like that first Black Friday sale, which is after I transitioned to monetization manager, and that might sound super like, I don't know, boring or like uninteresting or maybe like schlocky or whatever, but I designed and executed that whole thing, the first Black Friday sale. So this is Blackheart weapon skins. like gift with EMP purchase, the emails that went out, the daily rotation of deals. I was a big Steam fan. I still am like a Valve fanboy to this day, so I modeled it after like the Steam holiday sale, right? And to execute that at that scale, because we had hundreds of products in the store, it was fun. It was good. That year went off without a hitch, surprisingly, unlike some other years.
Well, what was the workload? Everybody, when I was coming into the industry, my impression was game studios shut down from like Thanksgiving till New Year's. Like everybody just gets time off.
No, dude. Well, I always used to joke like, because I was Canadian, right? Like my Thanksgiving's in October, so well, everyone's going out like Thursday, Friday, going to visit family, doing the American Thanksgiving thing. At the time, I didn't have I didn't have Mandy, my partner, and I didn't have I didn't really have a family life in Seattle. So I would just work that weekend, and I didn't mind it so much. It was fun. It was something that was my own, right? Like I ran it.
We didn't have automated systems. Everything that you had to do at that moment. And for some reason, we liked the idea of let's do something new every hour. Like that makes sense.
Oh no, I never did every hour. I don't know who conceived that. I did once a day. That seemed reasonable.
But that means throughout the holiday, when you're hanging out with your friends and family, you stop and you go and you execute on something and then go back. And then you still have to check it throughout the day. How's revenue going? Everything's still working? Are there any bugs?
Yeah. You watch the graphs or whatever. I check in on from time to time. I didn't mind it. Like I said, it was just me over there, right? Maybe I'm on Steam with you or something. Like, I don't know, playing whatever the game of the day was, Borderlands 2 or something. Yeah, I didn't mind it so much, and those were always fun to do. I know it sounds lame. What else is good? I think Secrets and Shadows was a monumental achievement. We were coming off, a really tough layoff at the time in 2016. And I remember the company kind of like rallying together to bring that major update out, which was a huge update for TERA and really kind of set us on a good course. That was a huge update. And so on that update, it was weird. I was not a product manager. Tree Shark was. I worked in marketing. So I went back to marketing after some time away from it. And I managed that campaign alongside Curtis, who's a great creative director. And we did all the marketing for it. We did the flying mount video. Shout out to Alan, who did an excellent job with that. I just pitched him like an idea on the fly. He's like, I got you. I know what you're talking about. I know what we're going to do. Which is how he and I always operated. It was just like, I would give him 2 sentences and he would just run with it, which is amazing. He was so creative. Yeah, a bunch of stuff like nice on the fly. The ninja video. I think that's the one where she like taps the villain on the back on the shoulder. That was kind of cute and funny, and I think well executed. It was not easy to build those kind of like narrative promotional spots with TERA. Like they literally were like using the in-game camera to like do this stuff, right? And I think that's just it, man. Like, actually, like, I think that's what EME did. Like, we did a lot, with what we had, I like to think. And we always made the best of it as we could, as we were able. And more than that, I think I'm actually underselling us. Other fun stuff, the summer events. I worked with Sean Dynamite on the debut of Crabs, which just came out of like a joke, essentially. Like, right, we're like, yo, you got crabs, and now they're in the game and they're everywhere. It's like, why is this here? And then that turned into a tradition, which is funny. So the summer event, Festival of the Sun, I remember working with you very closely on like when we gave all the swimsuits away as a reward for the event, because we really wanted to drive engagement, which I think was met with mixed opinion and justifiably. But
I ruined it in the later years.
Well, you can't come back from that, right?
Yeah.
I've pretty much poisoned the well for you. I'm sorry. Yeah. But my thinking was, these were costumes. They were the lesser tier costumes that were several years old at that point. I figured, if you participate in this event, I think we designed it so maybe you could earn one every 10 days or something, right? I don't know. I thought, like, let's give them out a meaningful reward for once in our lives. That was my motivation, because well, sometimes the rewards were pretty slim, weren't they?
Yeah.
In the base builds.
It's one of the things I see with a lot of MMOs where they'll introduce a cool seasonal event, but the seasonality just comes down to it keeps repeating each year and it doesn't get updated. And it's the same rewards and the same routine. And I do look at a lot of the events that we had, and they would change the rewards, but it wasn't like they were bringing a bunch of new stuff in. It wasn't compelling for each year. So we were very heavy-handed. You were very heavy-handed in going in and going, what additional, what added value are we bringing this year? How does it change?
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of like we understood our audience and what might be compelling to them or make them want to play. Mr. Sam Kim taught me many valuable lessons, and I understand he'll be on sometime in the future. But there's intrinsic motivators and there's extrinsic motivators, right?
I've had that conversation with Sam Kim.
Yeah, and it's very true. Like, if the game's fun and the event is fun, then you're going to play with it. That's like an intrinsic motivator. You're going to play it just to play it for the sake of fun. And then something like the rewards we add, those are extrinsic, right? I think that's the word. Maybe it's external, but anyways, I think you get the idea. I think, those events, they started with an intrinsic appeal, but by the 6th year or whatever, perhaps that's worn a little thin. So in that, what do you do, right? Well, you try your best to make it appealing. I agree with you. I think, those events, they were the same year in, year out. It's unfortunate. Like, maybe you could build a whole game around just refreshing seasonal events every year. I don't know, maybe. I always, you asked me about Halloween earlier, like TF2. Oh my God, one of my favorite games, which I didn't bring up. And it's old now, of course. And like when I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, this feels a little long in the tooth now. But those Halloween events were always so good. And every year it was something new. And every year it was quite elaborate. And I love that stuff. It's great. Actually, like that game and others were like WoW's Halloween event. Like those were the inspiration, right, for kind of what we were doing in the game to the extent we could impact it. But then certainly the marketing and positioning of stuff.
So EME was built around TERA. That was why EME existed. But as a publisher, we wanted other titles as well. So we picked up games like ZMR. So you come in and you get your opportunity to go over to work ZMR, but you're kind of a one-man show. The majority of the company is still vastly dedicated to TERA. So slightly limited resources. Would I be saying that correctly?
With ZMR?
Yeah.
No, I didn't feel that way. I think, the company made a good go of it. And like I said, I had Noxer at my back, who was like always like, if I needed advice, I could turn to him, and he always had good guidance. Radio G is right. And I meant to bring up Jurassholes as like the hallmark ZMR update. He's right. That was probably the best one. Maybe Halloween is a close contender, but that was a fun one. No, I think I was very well supported in ZMR's launch. The writing team was a big part of that. It was no small task to localize that game. I know it and you know it. We saw the localization files. They were a nightmare. And there's just a lot of text, much of which did not get used because it was like items that weren't for our version, but we didn't know that at the time, right? And eventually we figured it out and we streamlined it. But that's it. That's east to west, right? You got to figure that out. Like, you're not always going to know everything. And maybe it depends on your partner, the documentation they keep and how diligent it is. Maybe the translation company they use, right? Like many factors impact that. Yeah, no, I think, the company was very much behind that second title. They wanted to see it succeed. And at the time, TERA was doing well. Tree Shark had that thing like running like clockwork. And it's at that time, I remember, because I was on the outside looking in, that you guys are doing such cool stuff like Bam Killer, I think you guys touched on it. That's also the time of like the Golden Wolf debacle and stuff like that. But
I don't think that we've actually, I think it kind of came up in passing, but we didn't really talk about it.
No, I don't want to talk about it, but because I didn't do it, so I'm not in a position to comment on that. But yeah, ZMR was interesting, and I think there's many reasons why perhaps it failed, and that is, I think, the server infrastructure. We had cultivated this community around an MMO, and it wasn't an MMO. The game, maybe I talked about the business model being maybe a little bit off for our market. It wasn't, in terms of feature set and graphics, it wasn't like bleeding edge or anything. It was a fun game with a lot of content.
So you talked about when the kind of the high point, the eureka moment where you felt like you really got it was the Game of Drones update. What was that shift? What created that progress from coming in and maybe not hitting it the way it needed to be to that very end? What was the shift?
Yeah, it was experience, truly. Like I said, it was my first production gig. I don't think you can see it, but I got the poster on the wall back here of ZMR still to this day. I took it out the office when I left.
Your Jerry Maguire moment? Taking this.
I mean, they were happy to give it to me. I think they wanted to be rid of it.
I've got 3 of them.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got the framed one. The one that was in the hallway.
I got the cheaper foam versions with the dinged up corners.
So you took one of those home?
I took 3 of them. Yeah.
Good for you. Nice. That's a nice piece of key art. My colleague Young Park and Aaron LeMay, they both developed that.
So if you can remember them, what were some of those points? What were some of the stumbles? What were some of the successes?
Well, no, I know absolutely. Like, it was my experience with the game, and I mean, truthfully, it's maybe like sucks to say, but it was a little bit of like, well, we're at the point we're at. It's like I could do anything really, because it was like we're trying to like bring the game back, like trying to reinvigorate it, right? Pump some life into it because it wasn't doing so well. I also recognized eventually, and this is something I failed to recognize up front, was like, well, it is within my power and means absolutely to right this ship. And I have all of the authority, in fact, where I think I was maybe a little timid at first. And so what we did was I rebalanced the game. Everything, right? So when you leveled up, I made it rewarding. You got permanent weapons instead of temporary stuff. Remember, we made all the devices permanent. They were rentals before. And no other market that published this game did that stuff. But I think the game was made like 10 times better as a result of those changes. The leveling curve made sense. It was rewarding. It was engaging. It compelled you to move forward. And then all the stuff in the shop got repriced. And I think, the game became more accessible as a result, but maybe probably a little too late, although it was a lot. And we did, I think, a very righteous thing, and we had to do it. And EME wouldn't have done it any other way. And I worked with the platform team on it, and they were very helpful. As always, they were like wizards to deliver all of the new rewards based on the level you were at in the game, to recognize your progress up to that point. So we delivered those. It was a script that ran for like 36 hours. And we emailed everybody. We said, hey, come on back. Like, you got all this new stuff. All this stuff that was like a pain in the butt to get before is now like waiting in your mailbox. But yeah, I think that's kind of the story of it. So that update was called Game of Drones. We introduced the drones. Remember that? That was fun.
So definitely one of the reasons I want to do these interviews is because being at EME, it was always go. It was just work. And you spent more hours there than anybody else. But I always felt like I was trying to be a close second to that. It never felt like there was enough time because there was just so much that we could do. And I wouldn't even state it as there was so much we had to do. There was just so much we could do. And still, one of the things I look back on very fondly, that there was no, the boundaries that we created the boundaries that we had were the ones that we created. And it's, as I shifted from QA into product management, being a producer, that's one of the things I battled with, and I don't have it solved yet. But early on, I looked to creative, I looked to writing as the experts. I looked to platform as the expert. I need to create a web page. I need this localized. And I looked to them to give me how that should work. As I shifted from TERA to closers, I realized like that vision can start with me. I'm the one that's talking to all these different partners, all these different stakeholders, that there is value in me being a contributor. And that was such a dramatic shift for me. I didn't really realize it. And I think it's part of the pros and the cons of working at EME, being in product management. I didn't have somebody there walking me through step by step. I didn't shadow anybody really leading up to that. I worked with you a great deal. I worked with TreeShot a great deal. But I had my head so far up the QA butthole that I really wasn't paying attention to the way you guys did it or how you approach problem solving. So when I got into it, I was heavily reliant on all my expert teams to lead and strategize.
Yeah, that's the right approach, honestly. Like, if you think about my position there, what was I except like a glorified like task creator in Jira, right? I just had the best tasks.
Well, you just said yourself that the game of drones, you went and completely reworked the game. You re-strategized the leveling, you re-strategized the items, the monetization, the model. You could have just been taking a game and handing it out to the partners internally so they created the art and the promotion, but you actually stepped in and said, this product isn't being as successful as it should be. There's opportunity here. And you led that charge. You changed that design.
Yeah, that in that case it's true, right? But I think that was a dire or like maybe an exception of sorts.
So that's what I'm interested in. That's something I really, really battle on. I look at my time on TERA, and there were some events that we did internally where I allowed some people to take the expert role, and it didn't have the best outcomes. Like, oh no, this was bad. We used the wrong items. We hurt the economy. We've set a bar so high that once we remove this mechanic, no one wants to do the content anymore. We were making decisions that I look back on and I go, was that in line with the product? Was that in the best interest of the product? But here you are looking at it going, the product isn't providing the opportunity. I'm going to step in and do it. So it's something that I still haven't got, and I would love to find the exact way to ask the question so that I could gain that knowledge from you, even though we're not working together. But how do you do that? How do you look at the product and go, here's where I'm stepping in. This is going to be the right decision. Do you was it data? Did you rely on data? Did you go back to the dev, have long conversations? Like, how do you do that?
Oh, we certainly had some data, right? Like we used to run those loot tables, make sure they were working properly, and we had a sense of like, we knew exactly how many people had like a certain weapon, right? And you can make kind of, you ask the developers like, hey, like are these metrics like in line with other territories? Well, that's not really the question you're asking, or that's not the answer you're looking for, is it? Or that's not the right question, I don't think. The right question in that case was like, is this in line with the community's expectations, right? Or what they feel is rewarding, right? Like if everybody's saying like, well, this is too grindy, or, these rewards aren't so readily available as they should be, I think you do have to take some stock in what the players are saying, right, and respond accordingly. And you did that a lot, right? You would run events, although they're temporary, to supplement the supply of certain items. And I'd like to say that those are all data-driven decisions, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's gut. Sometimes it's based on feedback. And it's based on science, so it's a mix, right? You have to, like anything, you can't make decisions based purely on data. It's a science and an art, video games, isn't it? End of business. So, you gotta weigh those things.
So you wrap up your ZMR career. You sunset the game coming off of Game of Drones. You've hit your stride. You figured it out. You are now the best product manager we've ever seen at EME. You roll into TERA. You take all that success with you. Easy going right from the beginning.
TERA's tough, man. Like I don't know that we had the levers to make such sweeping changes to that game. Although we did a lot. But I think the competition surrounding TERA was more fierce. It was a game of a larger scale, much larger scale, not only in terms of audience, but technical and operational complexity. So yeah, it was a challenge. It was always a challenge. Oh God, Sound Waffles, you don't want to know. It was January. It was like a debacle. I wrote like the worst like end of the year thing, remember? And it was just trashed by the community. Rightfully so. Because I came into it off another game, right? And I wrote the most tone deaf end of the year like community post. Here's what's coming. But it didn't address any of the issues in the game at the time, right? It had like zero. And, I should have done more research. I should have had a better sense of like the community temperature when I wrote that thing. But I was new on the role. It was like January 2016, right? new in the role of product manager on TERA. I had worked in a marketing capacity and monetization for a long time. Harmonia took a beating on that. So that was an embarrassment. Probably someone asked low point. That was one for sure. I hadn't even thought about that until like your question. That same year, 5 months later, we did Secrets and Shadows, and I feel like that was a little bit of redemption. I hope. The question was what? Oh, coming in. Yeah. Question. Yeah. It was tough.
You'd gone through all that work with ZMR to find your place, to find how to take this product over, shifting to another product. Like, how much of that carries over? Do you come in prepared to a new product? Is it just hit the ground running, or do you kind of start at square zero? What's the experience as a product manager to take over a new product?
I think you got to do it thoughtfully, and I didn't. You have to understand the game. You need to understand the state of the game. So I knew TERA, but I didn't understand where it was at. You know what I mean? And Tree Shark went on to work on other products at NMass at that time. Yeah, I think that first quarter of the year, I screwed it up so spectacularly that they had to bring him back on for Secrets and Shadows, right? So, I mean, that should tell you something. My second go around at it, though, when Tree Shark later left, that was much better, I think. That was, I gotta think, I'm trying to think of a landmark or a touch point for the audience here. Yeah, 2017. So in the lead up, no, I was gonna say in the lead up to Valkyrie, but that wasn't me. That was Santora. What class came before Valkyrie?
You did the Brawler. You did.
I did Brawler. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. Brawler was all right. It's pretty good, except that the PvP was imbalanced out the door, which they had fixed overseas, but we still got the original version. Baffling. So this is really behind the scenes, but we changed one number and fixed it, so that was nice. Yeah, I guess it was around that time, November 2016-ish Brawler. I think I came back on as product manager and then transitioned it to a couple other product managers before I went on to work on console.
So let's get into that. That is a major point in EME history. I mean, there's a lot, right? We start working on TERA PC before its launch. We make this big jump from, it's a sub game, but we need to be free to play. The industry needs to do that. EME needs to have some other products. We can't just rely on TERA. There's so many really interesting, hard, or wonderful moments, but one of the biggest is trying to get TERA console to happen, and it tried to happen a couple of times.
Yeah, so that you and Scott touched on it during his appearance, and that's something that was discussed since TERA launched. Hey, this thing is a good console game. We should bring it out on these platforms. But at the time, we're talking PS3 and Xbox 360, and that was never going to happen. But Scott was the first person to rig up a controller at the office and then use whatever Joy to Key or Key, one of those hacky programs to get it working. And it worked fine. I mean, it's not ideal, but with some practice, you can get pretty good at it, right?
So what was it? What made us think that we need to get this on console? We took a PC game from a Korean developer, where in Korea console really isn't that important. Why? Why did we fight for this?
Well, because it's a big audience, right? It's actually a bigger audience, I think. Well, it depends how you look at it for certain genres. But yeah, I mean, it's a means to expand your audience. It's for NMass, it was a means to expand our capabilities, right? To publish on these platforms. And I think it was our ambition for a while. The leadership at NMass was, I think, really driving for it with Bluehole. And eventually, I think we built a good enough business case. I don't want to take the credit for it too much, because actually, it was Noxer who made the original business case and presented it. And while it didn't get traction at that specific time, it was the basis for eventually getting there. It was the worm in the ear, And then I think that's when they really started to consider it as a possibility. There was a sound business case here. Whether they were willing to take it on at that time or not, they weren't. But later they were, right? And at that time, I was in the best position, I guess, to lead it among anyone. We had new product managers running the PC version. I sunset. This was after PUBG. I sunset ZMR, which was heartbreaking, and then I moved on to that after training up, the new PMs. We started from nothing, and so did Bluehole. And you'd be like, it was amazing. Like some of the early builds, right? Like they were so non-functional, nothing worked. The whole screen is green. It was a struggle, man, because they'd never developed a console game before.
Yeah. The UI was an adventure. There were iterations of that.
Yeah, and we never published one either. We didn't even have an Xbox or a 360, or I'm sorry, a PS4 or an Xbox One in the office. Yeah, started from zero. But good on them. I think they put together a good port. I mean, a functional one. What I'm trying to say, forgive me, is I think it was highly playable. The design aspects of it were well done. If some of the technical aspects were maybe could have been better. But they got there with that stuff too, I think. But yeah, it was a lot of work. And in that case, other people were running different games at NMAS. And I was kind of left to my own devices alongside our platform team, the tech team, to kind of figure it out.
And that was a big difference for us too. We'd been building this NMAS ecosystem with our account management. And this was relying on Xbox and PlayStation and their platforms. Like that's a lot of stuff that we didn't know. It's a lot of development on the back end.
Oh yeah, to get the game running is one thing, right? And that was on the studio. For us, it was getting our platform, account system, the business components free to play running. EMP, the works, in-game store, launcher. Yeah, and that stuff's all tough. And then the other thing I think that we learned is like you sacrifice a little bit of control over the game, right? You can't just deploy patches willy-nilly. You have to plan for them. They need to go through testing. So I think it did demand a certain amount of diligence on the part of us and Bluehole to figure out all right, we need to make sure a build was locked up and airtight before you ship it.
And at that time, we were still very heavily involved in data sheets on TERA PC. It was a multi-day process to go in and regionalize the game. But here is a situation where we don't touch the data sheets at all. We don't have those servers.
Yeah, and at that time, they became fixed, right? Because they had to be. Which, I mean, had its benefits.
Yeah, there's an argument for, were we wasting time and spinning wheels with all that heavy-handedness in the data sheets? Should we have simplified that? Getting to see how TERA Console did data sheets was a good eye-opener for the PC side of things. This, you can communicate these things and get it done on that side and not have to grind it out here on this side. Maybe we start thinking ahead a little bit more.
Yes. Well, I would argue that is more akin to the traditional or understood way of east to west publishing, probably at other publishers, where with TERA, TERA PC, we took maybe a little more of a heavy-handed approach, for better or worse at sometimes, But we had other tools at our disposal, right? We had a full suite of tools to run events or supplement loot tables, but those tools didn't always exist, right? They came along over time, and I think what you're saying, or I think that's a factor in what you're saying. We eventually had those tools, but we didn't always, right? So I think some of what we did early on was out of necessity, where later we had tools that allowed us to do that without having to mess with the build so much.
So you push really, really hard. You get PlayStation, Xbox, EME out the door. Done it. We've solved this TERA console problem. And then, let's do TERA JP.
Well, okay, before we go to that, I think I grossly undersold the success of that partnership with Bluehole. It was a true collaboration. I know the team over there busted butts to make that happen. It was not an easy task, and I think they did a good job.
And it was not the same team. We had built this relationship with the TERA PC and the dev team, but we had a whole new team, Koji's team and all those fine folk. that was a whole new relationship we had to build.
Yeah, and I don't know that we ever worked like so closely or in that capacity with the development team where we were that close to it, right? Yeah, it was a true collaboration and a successful one. Can't be understated. And huge shout out and kudos to our platform team who made it work on our side as well. Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. We stayed overnight when we launched it. That was interesting. I have all these gray hairs now as a result of it. It was harrowing at points for sure. It was stressful. I got really ill ahead of launch, just out of stress. I remember I was like, I had to message Noxer. I'm like, yo, I'm dying. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Yeah, it was really bad. I was really stressed out. All that said, like all things considered, it was worth it, I think, in the end. Like it was a good result. We were successful. I think it reflected well on that it was a collaboration, with Bluehole. And then we learned how to live publish in that environment, which was fun and exciting as well. And I had a good time prepping updates for that platform or those platforms as well. We went to one of the last what's PlayStation's yearly event. It was like PSX or whatever.
Sounds right.
In Anaheim with Eric and Curtis, and that was fun. We demoed the game for the first time to people live, and people really enjoyed it. It was great. It was just like a fight against a Dracoloth, pretty much, but a three-person demo. The Holy Trinity, and it was great. And people loved it, and they were like, "There's nothing like this on console," and there wasn't at the time. There were other MMOs, but none of them had TERA's combat. Yeah, that was a thrill to put that thing in people's hands for the first time and see those reactions. Wow. That was truly memorable moment, like a glorious moment. My main point of contact at Bluehole came there just to see the reaction. And yeah, it reinvigorated us. Like I was tired, man. It was a slog, but that gave me the energy to push through to launch. That was in December 2017, and then we launched in March 2018, 3 months later. And then, yeah, as you said, sorry. And then I brought it out in Japan later, which was an interesting experience. We worked with an external partner there who was really great. And that's a tough thing, man. That's a different audience. That's a totally different set of expectations, totally different cultural expectations around business model, communication. It was not easy. It was a true challenge. I don't have a lot to say about that. So that was my last project there. And it was a real challenge. You had some involvement, maybe not so much.
No.
But I
didn't get involved until you were leaving. I was with Sean Dynamite on TERA PC. And you and Howlrath were operating console. And then when you started working on TERA console JP, Howlrath took over more of the control.
Yes.
And then you were kind of in the trench again, fighting the good fight.
Yeah, it came out, and it was pretty good. It did well. And it was it's not many people can say we brought out a game in Japan, it was wild. For all I did on that, I never went to Japan. I've never been to Japan to this day. I've been to Korea, of course. I've been to China for the ZMR. But yeah, we did the whole thing remote. I mean, quarantine would be impressed, I guess.
And that's it. That's your time at EME.
I think we hit them all. When I left the company, I had a stack of business card boxes. You remember?
Yes.
And I had every one that I ever had, and it was like 6 or 7 of them, different titles. And yeah, we got really stupid drunk going to karaoke that night.
Yeah, I actually didn't do the karaoke part. I pieced out before that.
Oh yeah, you were at the famed Diller Room, the last stop for every EME employee.
I don't know why we always went there. I didn't like that place.
But it became that spot.
It was that spot. Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I didn't like it, because it was a sad spot.
I didn't mind it. But everything in Seattle I view through a sentimental lens. I love Seattle. It's great. I miss it.
So looking back, you proud of all those accomplishments? You have regrets? EME,
Well,
like everybody else I'm talking to, like they were there towards the end of EME, and EME has shut down with them. But you're the first person I've talked to where you've separated. You've been gone for a little bit of time now, and you're now hearing that EME is shutting down. You've got friends at EME that are shutting it down. So how is that different? Like, what do you see now? Like each day of mine is a reflection day. What is it for you?
Well, I think, we were talking about it when it happened a little bit. I came online, and it's sad to hear for sure. And it stirred up all this like sentimentality in me. It's a bit heartbreaking for sure. Well, more than a bit. Yeah, it's rough. I think like obviously I've had some time away from it, so like it's not impacting me in the same way it was active employees, of course, which I feel for, and I probably can and should do more to help them out, and I will. Yeah, it's rough, and I for all that, and obviously, like I wish all the employees all the best, but also like the players too. Like I hope that, they end up in good hands and that the game can live on, because a lot of heart and blood and sweat and heart went into it for sure. So I hope it can live on.
So for everybody in chat that has heard your very passionate enjoyment of being in the industry, from marketing through product management, if you had to give some pro tips, how do you get into the industry? How do you choose to sacrifice work-life balance to be in the game industry in both marketing and production? What is that? What's the education? What's the work experience? What do you look for when you're reading somebody's cover letter or resume, or how much does networking fit into that?
It's a good question. I kind of stumbled into the industry, luckily. I think probably the requirements and credentials nowadays versus when I got into the industry are probably different and probably more stringent, I would argue. I think, there's probably true requirements before, whereas I think passion could get you a long way. And I still think passion's important. I think if you are aspire to be in the industry, you should be paying attention to the industry, read news, look at the business side. I guess it depends what side of the industry you want to come in on. If you want to be a developer, obviously you need a certain technical proficiency or artistic capability. If you want to get in on the publishing side, like what we do, it is very business focused. There is a lot to learn in that regard. Pay attention to the industry news. Try to look at things with a discerning eye. Understand the motivations perhaps behind why a publisher might do one thing or another, instead of just kind of jumping to conclusions or making certain assumptions like that they're always out to get you. Or maybe they are, but I mean, yeah, it's kind of, take those. You got to consider always that there's somebody behind this stuff, right? It's not like some faceless entity. It's not like some AI, or somebody made a decision somewhere. And then there's good resources out there nowadays, right? Like I think a fair bit of GDC was free this year. There were some good talks there. There's an excellent podcast called Deconstructor of Fun you can check out. That's business and industry oriented. I think it's a lot about just paying attention, honestly. Like games are a pastime, right? They're a recreational thing, something you do for fun and enjoyment. But if you want to make it your job, you need to think about it a little more critically, right? And observe more intently. Like when your favorite game's making an update, well, how do they talk about it? Where do they put it? How are they solving certain design problems? Or, the community has a lot of feedback, right? And I think there's a lot to be gleaned from, how developers respond or react to that feedback or don't. And then I think, on the publishing side, you need some base level business, I think, education as well, probably nowadays. And then I think on the other side, if you're trying to get into designing games, I think that is about, I think that I think some of that can be learned, but I think some of that is observed and kind of just self-taught. Some people have a true talent for that. It's an interesting field. I think you and I dabbled in that a little bit, in a really kind of minimal way. But I get a kick out of it, and I do a little bit of it now. And It's cool to like, I guess, being a little bit removed from it. It's fun to like, well, not only like recollect or like remember these things, but to talk about them a little more openly and grant as Sarah Monin said, like to grant some insight, some behind the scenes information that perhaps we wouldn't otherwise if I was still in my former position.
Yeah, I think the industry postmortems are always important, but a postmortem you go in and you have an audience that has a couple things that they want to hear and have expectations. This is a little bit different. These reflections I think are absolutely important, and we should be doing them. If you could go back and change one thing you did while at EME, what would it be?
I think I touched on them. Like I would deploy ZMR the right way the first time. I wouldn't have written that terrible end of the year letter. I mean, those are two big ones. I think those are the things. I think I could have also done a better job to like pay attention or participate in the TERA end game. I think that would have made me better at my job. That's
always a hard one. So in the game industry, everything I would always hear people to say know your product, and I can understand if you're working on a small game or even something ZMR where it's not a small game, but the content is more concise, more compact. But you take an MMO where you've got the whole leveling experience, where you've got the in-game experience, we have multiple classes, where you have the PvP experience. I think it's impossible for any one person to know the fullness of their product. That's something I never was able to figure out.
Yeah, it depends on the product, right? I think for some products that's rather easy, but for TERA, it's probably tougher than some. And then there's a difference between playing a dungeon on a QA server or getting a piece of gear than it is on live, right? So it's hard to participate that when you're already on to the next one very often.
Can you talk a bit about the process of setting prices, sales strategies for cash shop items? To what degree does it depend on the developer's direction? Does direct player feedback play a role, or is it mostly driven by past sales data?
We had pretty free reign in that regard, and I think our business model was our own. We established, certain parameters or like a certain format at the start around free-to-play launch, and we mostly stuck to that, I would say. We had the rare items, we had the normal items that we sold directly. I think, TERA's visual fidelity maybe informed a bit of a higher price point than some other games. But we were receptive to feedback in that regard, and I think I tried to mix it up from time to time when I was doing that. Yeah, definitely player feedback played a role, for sure, and influenced some of our tactics. I can't think of any right now, but I know we dabbled in stuff like, well, what if we just sell this thing directly and like instead of stash it in a loot box or whatever. And we experimented a whole lot, and we tried different ways to sell different products all the time, right? Like golden gift box is an example of that, or positioning some items or reserving them for an event even, right? Like that's something we tried to do on occasion to make something special around anniversary time, that type of thing, right? Yeah, I think we had a lot of autonomy in that, and I think there were some missteps along the way, but I think we did a lot right in that regard as well. Like if you compare our free-to-play launch like to some competing games that launched similarly at the time that had, like tables of restrictions around the free player versus the paid player, I think we did pretty good in that regard. And again, kudos to, I think Noxer was the brainchild of some of that stuff, and we really went with like a streamlined approach to our free-to-play model, right? It was like, hey, you can play the whole game. We're not going to restrict content. There's a bunch of optional stuff you can buy, and maybe you don't like the prices, but we're not going to inhibit your gameplay.
And kept it fairly played or not pay to win through the majority of its time.
I think it depends how you look at it. I think some people would argue differently. Certainly, like, there was some convenience in the cash shop.
What were the best EME initiated events that occurred in TERA while you were there?
That occurred in TERA. Like I think from the outside looking in, Bam Killer seemed like not only a well-conceived in-game event, but also one that like had a really, I think, fit and finish in its promotion and marketing. when EME shut down. On the forum, someone linked that post, and I thought that, or that video rather, and I think that video provided a rare glimpse into the EME like floor, and like the size of the company and the range of diverse talent there. So I think that was a fun and good one. For TERA specifically, I think separate of that, like, I mean, Krabs is pretty memorable. I guess. I like Halloween.
Time to pick a favorite. Who was your favorite coworker and why?
Who else but Guffy Bear, right? I mean, no, the truth is that's a very difficult question. I can't really say one way or the other. I liked so many people there, and we all worked so well together. In my position, I worked with just about every team, and what an honor, truly, to work so closely with such a diverse group of people with a range of talents. That's the joy of being a product manager at NMAS, is you are kind of this glue, or you're like you're this nexus between the teams. And man, what a great place to be when you're working with people like that.
Do you remember the last products you worked on TERA PC to release? You weren't there for the Dragons, but I don't remember how far back that goes.
Well, I did Dragons.
The Dragons with the buffs? The 1%, 2%?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, you remember...
no, I suck with time. It's one of the worst things.
Remember, I was overseeing all of product management. So that was I was like working with all the producers, right? So... if I didn't work on that directly, then I was certainly aware of it.
I have a hard time remembering. I remember releasing Dragons. I have no idea who was working on what at that time.
Yeah, there's a stretch of TERA where we were just heads down and going, and yeah, it's a little fuzzy. But I got to think, if my memory serves me correctly, as I've been watching like Japanese Iron Chef, I think it was like spring 2017 or something. We brought that stuff out, and yeah, there was a lot of debate around the sales strategy. That's for sure. And I think we put our own spin on that. We made it available with the scales, right? Mm-hmm. That was all NMAS. They didn't intend for that, but it was too pay to win. We thought.
The Dragon Scales primary thing was the pot, which is people still use for the pot.
That was actually, you know what? That was Tree Shark. That wasn't me. So he conceived that, or he fought for that. So
wow, the Dragons were when Tree Shark was still. I really do. I have no fixed. I can't get fixed points of reference for these time periods.
I'm pretty sure, but. I would say, he's the one who I think shepherded that. So good on him. He fought the good fight there. I think the Dragons, they were conceived with a certain intent, and I mean, it's no secret. TERA is published by different publishers all around the world, and like you have to think some of the things we did maybe puts other publishers like we can't be too flippant, or we can't diverge too greatly from the plan at the risk of damaging other companies' business.
Yeah, there was.
I'll just leave that.
We were free to. There was a big chunk of what we were free to monetize on, and the strategy around that. But I think a lot of community confusion comes in. We didn't design any of the items that go in the store. These were items that were designed wholly by the developer. They were things created there. We didn't reach out and say, this is the next series of items we want. We were getting shipment of product, and that was the product we had that was new in that build. We could choose to hold some things back, but anything that we held back meant there was a gap in that product release. There wasn't just, here's 1,000 things, you're going to choose the 3 that you want to release. We had the products to release. Our part of it was always, as a publisher, was the promotion and the way it's being sold. So the smart boxes that are created, the loot boxes that are created, but at no point did we decide on what product to put in the store. So it wouldn't have been, oh, we don't like these dragons, let's not sell them. It would have been, okay, we're not selling anything. Like, just don't sell anything, because that was the monetizable item delivered in those patches. So we do have, and correct me if I'm answering this wrong. We do have some control, but it's more on the publishing side of it, not on the development, what goes into the store side of it.
I think we tried to influence that, and we did at certain points. I can't recall exactly what items we kind of like spearheaded.
I think the first one we did was steampunk. That was one of our major ones.
Those were pretty successful. Yeah, Josh built so many decks of like, hey, here's some ideas for items, right?
Right, but that wouldn't ever be something in our build. That would be something that the developers would take and would be released globally. There's never a situation where EME goes, hey, this is what we want specifically, and the developer goes, okay, we will dedicate development time to creating something specifically only for your region, and now you're going to be separate from the rest. It's a global game. There are multiple publishers.
When I did monetization, I did actually, I think, get some Halloween items in the game. I sent a deck. I think something like the Frankenstein, some of that stuff came from us. And another set that I just remembered that we definitely were the driving force behind was the hip-hop items.
Oh, really?
And as I recall,
the ones that included the Beats by Dre?
Those weren't too hot.
If I recall right, steampunk wasn't a heavy hitter either, at least globally.
All right, I dispute that.
That
was a common misconception, but those things had staying power, unlike most items.
I got lost
because they had a broad appeal, right? So over time, you bring a player into the game. And that's an item I think that's attractive, right?
Mm-hmm. Radio G, could you explain the decision to do away with in-house customer support at EME? We never did do away with in-house customer support. Customer support was there until the final days when we let go the majority of the company just recently. We've always had in-house. What we did is we opened it up to an outsourced team so that we would have 24/7 coverage so we could do more. But the entire time that I've ever been at InMass, we've always had an internal customer support team. They were more of the... I don't know my customer support terminology, so apologies for people that do. This is probably going to sound pretty stupid. But they were just the higher level, the higher tier of support. So a lot of the tickets that would come in like, hey, my launcher doesn't work. Hey, I deleted an item. Can you help me? Those would go through the lower tier, the outsourced team, which was a 24/7 team. They were always there, holidays, night times, every hour of the day. And then if a contact issue was more difficult, then that would get escalated to our internal team who had more product knowledge. And then our internal team also had the responsibilities of developing the documentation and the training of the outsourced team. So my entire time at EME, we always had an internal customer support team. Yeah, everyone is off-site right now. Literally no one is in our office except for an occasional tech person or somebody dropping in to get Ellen statues. The office has been pretty much abandoned for 6 months. How long have we been quarantined? How long has this been going? What did you think the habanero pepper would taste like versus how it actually tasted?
Yeah, prior to that point, I don't know that I'd ever eaten a habanero anything.
Not many of them in Canada?
No. Where I grew up in Canada, there's not even now there is, but there wasn't ever even a Mexican restaurant anywhere. Like, I didn't have real Mexican food till I moved to Seattle.
Oh, man. That's not even, that's like a far cry from Mexican food.
Well, down here, they got some good stuff, though.
I'm a little bit jealous, yeah.
Seattle, by my standards, they had great Mexican food. You go to the Matador in Ballard or something, they got good eats. I don't know if you ever been there. Yeah, you have. Actually.
I love it. Yeah, it's good. I still take El Borracho, man.
El Borracho's great.
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
it's great.
That's pretty good. I missed that place. That's for sure.
I've recently come across Memos. Did you ever go to Memos? There's one in the U District. MEMO. It's a 24-hour thing. They have these jumbo burritos. One of the things that I love, I'm from West Texas. So I'm very used to Tex-Mex Mexican food. And I came here and I would go order a burrito and they give you this massive log. And I'm like, I can't even, can't bite into this. What's this for? And it's half full of rice, which is supposed to be the side dish on your plate. Why the shit did we choose to fill half of a burrito with rice? I'm disappointed. I don't understand any of this. Memos, they still do large burritos like that. You don't find rice, man. You find that thing is thick. It's great. And they have Memos, dude. You come back
Scott
to Seattle.
Scott contests your opinion here. So let me talk about this habanero, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a very distinct kind of spice. It's like a bit, I don't know, like smoky a little bit, I guess. But afterward, I didn't like habanero for a while. Now I'm into it. I can still eat it. Like I get a habanero salsa from sometimes. You know how they have those like fancy salsas at the grocery store or whatever. I've kind of like, I guess, recuperated enough to go back to that. But it does always bring me back to that day.
When you did that, I don't think I knew what the hot pepper challenge was, but there are videos of other people doing the hot pepper challenge. I just didn't know.
Yeah. So, hot ones, everyone, like, that's the hot thing now. No pun intended, but like, really, it originated from hot pepper gaming. People like me were coming on there. Mostly it was like influencers and stuff. It wasn't like producers, although they began to dabble in that. Coming on and eating a hot pepper, in exchange for promotion of their product.
Yeah. And it was just kind of an out of the box thing, right? You got delivered a couple images or something. You put that up on the wall behind you. You had a couple of their art and you just go.
Credit to Tonka. He was among the, I think we were among the first to do it remotely, because usually they have you come into the studio there, but they'd set up the backdrop in the stream room. And I mean, it looked reasonably similar to their studio setup, and we made it happen. I mean, it made for a good piece of content. I thought when I came out of that thing, I thought I did a terrible job. But man, that video's got a lot of views, and it's pretty entertaining, I think, in retrospect. So I knew it was a winner when we showed the company. Everyone was just dying in the lobby laughing. Man, I'll tell you, my butt was sore the next day.
I'm surprised you didn't go home, man. I would have went home. You look like you were dying. The outtakes are amazing.
They sent me up with that ghetto milk box. Gross. It was like I didn't shake it, so it was like half dust, and the straw was broke.
I think that was your comment afterward too. You took a drink, you're like, I didn't shake it.
Well, it wasn't even real milk. I don't think it's a juice box.
Oh man!
I don't think it was refrigerated. It was like powdered milk, space milk.
Oh god, I'm gonna watch it again when this interview's over. I'm watching the hot pepper challenge. Matt Denommenator stuff.
Oh, you should run it after this, maybe.
I will. How do you feel about the success of TERA console and how it's been decided to become its own game within its own path, gear, etc. After you helped make it a reality? I don't remember. I don't know if I was a part or if it's even something I could remember. When TERA console first launched, they had that back catalog of TERA PC's content, and there were some changes along the way, obviously. But when was the conversation that this is going to be a different path? Was that from the very beginning? Did we know that?
No. So it was playing catch up for a long time, actually, for almost the entire time I worked on it. It was only right before I left that there began to be talk about taking it down its own path. And I think that I don't know that I ever saw this realized in a live build, but the talk was, and maybe this has since come to pass, is they would selectively take content and bump it up so that it deployed sooner, because it was good for the health of the game. Because it was content we knew to be successful. And maybe they cast aside some of the stuff that didn't work so well. But actually, I think that's a smart strategy, right? Like, it's better than deploying the brawler at OP PvP damage, Like, you gotta give some thought to the patches, right? Like, you have other markets where these things have been deployed, and you've made fixes. To deploy them in a linear fashion actually is not sensical. But to weed out, that content, that does take work, right? It's not a small task. So, but yeah, my understanding is they were bumping up some stuff, and then I think they realized or recognized some opportunity in maybe developing some unique content for the console builds, because they are quite different in terms of, I think, most importantly, audience. So you have to you gotta provide what your audience wants. Thanks for all you did. The players, they are the lifeblood of the company and the game, and great games, great service. It might sound like a load, but it's true. Like, we were very player focused company always. We took to heart, I think, a lot what the community had to say. I think we tried to do right by them when we could. And I mean, someone like you, Ceremonin, like producing content that is truly helpful to the community and new players specifically, that stuff's invaluable. Like, it drives hype better than I think we could at that time. So yeah, thanks to the players.
To what degree did the experiences on TERA PC influence the direction of TERA console, both in terms of content development and monetization strategy? For the business monetization strategy, were there any major differences between what didn't work for console that and the prior experience on PC?
Yeah, I wish I had a more interesting answer, but not so much. I think we took what worked on PC and we brought it to console. One of the unique things was all those founder packs we made, right? Like, that was a winning strategy that was popularized by other publishers like Perfect World and Hi-Rez, and we kind of followed suit. So like, some of our bundling there was unique to that platform. And I had a certain freedom to build those products because like, I saw an opportunity in doing so, and many of them, like, I understood holistically, like, here's the products we have, versus when they came out on PC, they were linearly deployed. So I knew, like, hey, these items go well together.
Yeah, you had such an extreme back catalog of stuff to use. I wouldn't have, that would have been a nightmare to be completely green on the product and getting those extremely long lists of products.
Oh yeah, you saw my spreadsheets. Yeah. I think there was like 400 products or something. But, well, when we first went free to play, we had 400 products in the store, which is stupid. Like, no game would do that nowadays. In fact, like, something like Fortnite or even Spellbreak, which we talked about, like, they have a rotating lineup of products that's maybe like 10 at most, and then they cycle them. And I mean, that promotes you to log in and check the store, right? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's differing opinions on that. Like, do you have a wide product catalog or like a shallow one and you rotate it? I mean, TERA, we had a lot of products, that's for sure. But to answer your question, Counterpoint, like, yeah, not so much, I don't think, outside of a few bundles and founders packs. We knew what products were going to sell well, or we knew what had appeal, so we positioned them appropriately in terms of timing. So, like, we might align them to a major update, or we made sure certain products were available on day one. But the strategy around their sale in terms of pricing didn't differ too much. And we did observe some minor discrepancies in what products were popular among the console audience and the PC audience, but I can't recall, unfortunately, any specifics there, although I agree that would be pretty interesting.
From the content development side, that's something we really can't speak too much on, but my experiences working with Koji, and I think maybe Ceremonin can address this issue because he's worked with Koji quite a bit now. That team is extremely passionate about console, and they had that history of TERA PC, the high points, the low points, and when the content came out. And Denommenator spoke about this a little bit. They shifted things around. They changed what content was coming out at what time, and the state of that content. So I know the development team spent a lot of time and was very critical about the history of TERA PC and how content should come out. And when they started making that decision that they were going to break away and come up with their own content, that was for that reason. They had a vision. They believed that they could make different decisions, and they believed in those decisions. So they started executing on it. They could have just, they could have just remained a port team, right? They could have just made a port team, let TERA PC keep developing, but that's not what that team did. So I think it had to be very critical for their success to review all that.
I don't know that I have a good answer for that one. If you had to choose an MMO to work on right now, what would it be? I don't know. I'm kind of somewhat removed from the genre, sadly. There's some interesting stuff happening, right? New World, you said, was pretty decent. You tried it?
New World is a very interesting prospect because not only are they developing an MMO, but they're developing the engine. So how cool would that be? You're not limited. You're not a team that's picking up Unreal or Unity or something. Like, you're creating that engine. So what do you want the game to do? Oh, it doesn't really work? Okay, let's develop that engine so that this works now. And it's being built into Amazon's ecosystem. I mean, what are they going to do? There's going to be so much. It's going to be nuts. The possibility of what they could do. I would love to work on New World.
You had a good time with it, though, when you played it?
I love it. I'm hesitant to talk about it. I'm not hesitant to talk about it. I'll talk about anything. But I'm hesitant to get my hopes up because what I played, what me and Tonka played, was a preview. It wasn't stated as an alpha or a beta. And it's coming from their original vision was a more PvP sandbox game. And that just wasn't popular. Feedback was like, don't do this. Please don't do this. So they've changed it and they released a preview. So like the engine is there, the core mechanics are there, the systems, but is that going to be what it looks like? Is the questing indicative of the questing? Is the combat going to change? Like, there's so much that could be altered. Like maybe they were just collecting data. Maybe they were just testing the engine. I don't know. I don't know how indicative it's going to be, but a story I tell every time, and I think I say the same intro to it every time. Hey, it's a story I tell every time. I went from WoW Tab Target to TERA Action Combat, and it blew my mind. BDO opened me up a little bit more. Arcade opened me up a little bit more to the extent you could take combat or the extent you could take in-game systems. I look at New World, and the systems that they have there, I think, are another leap for the MMO genre. One being in TERA, BDO, and a lot of other games, your combat feedback is damage numbers. That's what you see. Scrolling damage text. That's your feedback. And then there's a couple of things that will happen where you have loss of control. But at the same point, like a lot of the games you play, you'll just have a pop-up that says loss of control. For New World, it's more like playing a Souls game. If you take on two mobs at once, you get staggered. Stagger isn't an effect that's applied. It's you literally are getting hit in the face. Your character cannot hit something in the face while being hit. I very much appreciate that. I think that's going to be one of the most enjoyable factors. However, one of the problems that we see with TERA, with action combat, is you have ping issues. With Tab Target, the server can resolve that a lot better. With action combat, it may look like a character's in front of you and they're not really in front of you. And that swing doesn't actually happen. You see it happen. You see your sword go through the other character, but no damage is ever registered. New World's going to have that same problem. They've got to solve that.
I mean, did you experience that in the preview?
To some degree, yes.
If they instance it right?
Well, so that's the thing. There's no instance. I think there may have been some dungeons later on, but it's all open world. It's based on faction fighting and taking control of little cities. So the preview we played didn't have a high player population, but when you saw streamers get into the high player population scenarios, like when Asmongold would get all of his viewers in there to do something, they had issues. There was some desync. Tonka and I running around by ourselves. No, it's pretty fluid. It felt great. So it's one of those things. Like one of the things I've talked about with TERA, I think that we were lucky a lot of the time. Arcade came out and server issues, couldn't launch the game, and that persisted for like a week or so. Just couldn't get the server to stay up and running. BDO had server issues. It had just issues. It couldn't launch. Blade and Soul server issues. Like all these MMOs that kept coming out, they hurt us. But they all had issues, and players would, they couldn't log in. So they were excited. You're sitting there day one, or day one, night one, and you're like, I'm gonna go back and play TERA. So, we lucked out on that. That could be the issue here. New World launches. They've got Amazon. They've got all this amazing server tech, cloud tech. They're going to be at the top of their game. But will the servers be able to manage all those players and all that communication? That hurts. Your first week, a player's first hour in the game, critical. You want to leave the best impression possible, and that's going to be streamed, like the influencer level these days.
If anyone has the ability to sort that out, I would hope it's Amazon, right? Come on.
And that's one of the reasons I'm excited. They've got a cool, neat, unique in some ways MMO. They have their own engine, and they've got the server architecture to make an MMO easy, I would guess. And they've got Twitch in their back pocket. Like, they've got so many of the pieces there.
Elder Scrolls looks like it's doing interesting things, although I'm not super like aware. Like in on a like I'm not. I don't have an in-depth awareness. Here's a non-answer for you. All right, Fall Guys. That might be interesting. I really like Takeshi's Castle or MXC. There's a Twitch channel, only MXC, and they just play MXC all day long.
Is there really?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I would watch that.
Yeah. So I think that game's fun, although I've only played it a handful of times. But it's more of a battle royale, right? But on Steam, it's under massively multiplayer.
It definitely gives you the sense of MXC when you're playing Fall Guys. Like this is the inspiration.
Well, it was. I know. I spoke to a guy at the company.
Oh.
Yeah.
You've had some very great conversations. You also spoke to the Goat Simulator guys. I remember that story.
That was at GDC when we debuted ZMR, and we met outside a Korean restaurant. And well, actually, they were at the table next to us, and we had a little chinwag and.
And you've hung out with the Dead by Daylight guys. Like you've had so many interactions with some of the super awesome people in the industry. I'm always jealous.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, you have too, no? At like our PAX present appearances and stuff. Or were you just doing demos all day? I
was the guy doing I geeked out with the GDQ guy. That's been my claim to fame. The GDQ guy played Mistover. I was like,
yeah, I heard that.
I told you about it. Yeah.
We're gonna go to GDQ one day when it's again an event, but and I'm looking forward to it. But for the audience, Keaton Guffey would never take a break during. He was just like a glutton for punishment, and he would never take a break all day at these events. He would do demos from open to close, which is crazy, right? You got to go get food. You got to give your voice a rest. You gotta like just chill out for a minute. Like I enjoyed doing that, and I went for long stretches as well, but nothing like you. That's just pure punishment.
Never once lost my voice. Never once got a pox. Never got sick from any of these.
No, nor did I. Never got sick.
And you're handing people controllers, and like, you're touching everybody that comes. We
had headsets. And that was another thing. NMAS, and this is absolutely true. We prided ourselves in delivering an excellent demo every time, and that is for sure. We did deliver on that. At that, I talked about that PSX event. People had never, in the console space, had never played a demo of that caliber, where it's multiplayer and there's a guy in your ear coaching you the whole way and explaining you how to do it. These guys were like, yo, this is the best demo at the show. We were across the hall from God of War, like PS4, and people were coming out of that and coming to play TERA. And they're like, wow, this demo is like really buttoned up. Like, this is pretty fun. Like, this is cool. Like, you're a hype man. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, Commander went hard on us, man. He would tell us I think the first one I worked on was Critica. That was probably the first demo I did for NMAS. And working with
PAX East.
Yeah, working with that product manager, it was very loose. It was, we're going to get something, we're going to go through it, and then Commander's like, okay, you're going to run us through it. We're like, we're going to what? Like, you're going to run us through it. We're going to come in as a team. You're going to sit down with some EME people. You're going to run them through it. It's going to be a real demo. Okay. And he slaughtered us. He had it's like your father's looking at you and you've just done the dumbest thing, and he's so disappointed. He wants to disown you as a child. That's what Commander was looking at us as. And it was so heartbreaking. And his feedback was, you got to give me the feels. I go very literal in these situations. I need to succeed. I need to be able to deliver. So get literal. And he would go, you got to give me the feels. I'm like, what the hell are the feels? And his definition of the feels were the feels. And I was like, I hate you. I hate you. What are you talking about? But he pushed so hard, and we threw away so many scripts, and we did it so many times. I feel that eventually I got it. I hope I eventually got it. I never had Commander actually come in and say, you know, you're the best person ever. And unbelievable. He never gave me the credit I feel I was due. But he grinded so hard on us that, yeah, dude, we would go to these shows and
you earned credibility and recognition as like a prime demoer for sure, no doubt.
I was trying to be a little sarcastic, but I'll accept the ego boost anytime you want to offer it. But yeah, it was absolutely important. And no, I'm not. You work so hard on something like that, it gets from being, I want to deliver well on this, to I own this thing. This is mine. No one will ever do it as well as me. Like, it becomes that important. So no, I'm not leaving the demo booth. I'm there from opening hour to closing hour because I worked harder than any other point to deliver on that experience.
People are coming to see you, not the game.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we got lost. Do you want to share some of the Black Friday sales stories? Now, I kind of tried to touch on this, but you were pretty resistant. Maybe I'm just tainted with working with Sean Dynamite because he made those experiences grueling. So maybe you just had a really easy planned out process, but it seemed to me once I got involved in Black Friday, like, wow, the lead up to it, the design of it, that was a lot of work, pulling all the items together, figuring out what the price points were, and then going in and setting everything up, working with the platform, working with writers, working with art to get it all set up right so it made sense, getting it all over to QA to be tested. And then we didn't have amazing automated systems where you could set things up a week ahead of time and get it all tested and then walk away and go do your holiday. You were setting things up on the fly. Like, our promotional material, like, you would go enter it, you would turn the item on and off in the shop. Do you not have that war story? Did we do it wrong?
No, the one the Counterpoint said where it broke the game, that was the 1 year that was an absolute debacle, and I was in charge of that year. Although I don't know who's in chat. Tinglehoff spoke up earlier. I don't know who that is. Do you?
I don't know who
member of our platform team or something?
I don't know.
Because they're an employee. But
Tinglehoff, do you want to out yourself? You don't. In any case, you don't have to.
It was a technical shortcoming. There was a specific file that when too many sales were deployed at once, it grew to a size that was untenable for a certain system and the whole thing crashed. And then I don't know why it impacted the game's performance, but it did. And that year was an absolute nightmare. You talk about setting up Black Friday and it being a lot of work. Well, that year we set it up. I set it up. We deployed it. It broke the game. No one could buy anything. And then I had to set it all up for a week later. The weekend after, we did a make good.
Oh, here's a hard one that I don't think we can answer. Again, we were a publisher, not the developer. So a lot of the dev details we're not really part of. We pass information. But I don't shy away from anything. It's going to take me a while to read. Hold on. Was the prospect of predictive netcode being added to TERA ever passed by the developers? We all know that was the main reason why banning TERA proxy was such a controversial topic, since certain modules enabled the game to be playable for people with high ping. So one thing I want to address there, the way that you're stating it, maybe I'm misreading it, but we all know the main reason for banning TERA proxy was such a controversial topic since modules enabled. The issue with TERA proxy is when we would look at our arbiter, it would be taking a beating. It was just getting relentlessly hammered, and we had service issues. And when we tracked things down, what we saw was there was significant packet injection from time to time, and some of that we felt could be attributed to the use of various TERA proxy modules. So if we're trying to make an argument like there's some positives from TERA proxy, how many positives do you get if somebody can literally crash the service at any time? So that's a difficult one. TERA proxy is a difficult one. The conversation about making that communication better, having more predictive netcode, I don't know if we really ever dug in that with the developer. Did we? Did you have conversations about the coding, the tech side of it?
No, and in fact, I think that this was an area where like certain community members actually had more knowledge of how the game worked in a technical capacity than we did. Than I did, let's say. I'm sure there were people in the company that understood. I mean, we always pushed for the game to be better, and that included, network performance. And our operations team was always fighting those fights. And I think they had some success in certain regards, but yeah, this one's a little bit outside my my realm.
Yeah, I say it all the time, and Denommenator kind of said it a little bit, but not the way I do. we've never sat in a room and heard somebody say, I have a really bad idea. Let's screw the game up and do the worst possible idiotic thing. Or, hey, here's a system that's broke, but I don't really care. Let's leave it broke. No one has ever had that conversation. Everyone has always been passionate about the game, the community, everything. We always want to make it better. But not everyone is in a position to do that. As a product manager, I don't have conversations with the developer about their code. Not once. It's not part of what I do. I have conversations about the promotion, the communication, the customer support, the payment, the services that we provide as a publisher. That's our expertise. That's why a developer comes to a publisher. The developer doesn't come to a publisher and say, hey, we want you to tell us how bad our netcode is. That's never a conversation I'm going to have. They're coming to me and they're saying, I have no idea how to do socials. What would you tweet? How do you do an email campaign, which is something Denommenator really revolutionized and created the pattern, the template for what I learned off of. I don't want to just blindly send an email. I don't want to send an email that's confusing. I want to send a clear call to action for the player. I have a reason to send you this email. I have something I want you to do. This is a benefit for you. There's a way you do those. There's a way to make those strategies more effective that the developer doesn't spend time developing, because that's not what they do. Just like as a publisher, I don't spend time trying to fix netcode in a game. So it's more on us as a publisher to share the details of the issue, show them our logs, show them all the information they need, communicate with them what the issue is. But once it gets beyond that point, there's little to nothing we do as a publisher, unless we want to straight out buy that studio and then create our own development team or something.
Well, there's a piece of it that isn't in our control, right? And that is like where the servers are housed, and the hardware they run on, or the game runs on. But how the game handles, latency and packet transmission, that's a little bit outside of our, we can certainly push for improvements in that regard, but that's not, we don't have the source code,
Yeah, that's all straight up encrypted. We're not reading that. Dude, I'm ready for the Matrix. The moment we can do that. Denommenator is a big fan of VR. I'm not a big fan of VR because I've watched the Matrix and I just want to be in the game. I don't know. It's a teaser.
I see some appeal in it. I got a VR rig throughout quarantine, just because, why not escape reality? It's the best time to do so. It's fun, but I can only play it in short bursts, and I think it's the future, but the current hardware has limitations, of course, in terms of capability, but also comfort level. But yeah, I see a lot of opportunity in it. It's fun. What I play the most is ping pong, because I don't have to chase a ball around, but it feels real.
That's how our society is going to shift. I want to play ping pong, but I hate chasing the goddamn ball across the room. VR, that ball just comes to you. Great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so Sound Waffles knows more than we do. See,
yeah,
I know about lockstep and predictive, but yes, right, exactly. And this was the issue. I alluded to it, but I didn't address it specifically. But this was the same issue with ZMR. It was the netcode was developed for geography, a certain distance from the server, and I don't know that it was adapted appropriately for a Western audience.
And for the most part, not just a small area of connectivity, but also a better connectivity. You don't have these random satellite connections that are awful.
Radio G's question. I'm dying to play Among Us. I want to get in a group, but it's difficult, right? Because we all have our individual responsibilities. I can only watch from afar, but I'm dying to play this thing. No, you're not into it?
I'm into it. It's just, it's hard. There's a lot of times where I sit in front of my computer and I go, what do I want to play? And it's hard. One of the reasons I started streaming is because when you stream, you set a schedule. Monday through Friday, I'm doing this thing from this time to this time. I've had Sundays. I wake up and I sit in front of the PC and I go, what do I want to play today? Minecraft? TERA? WoW? Do I go through my Steam library? It's like 5 hours later, and I've been just playing YouTubes on repeat. I don't even know what's been shown there, and I haven't played a single game. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to launch something. I launch something, then it gets in there, and I move 2 steps forward. I'm like, I don't want to play it, so I turn it off. Being a streamer, like, I'm forced to do these things. With Among Us, there's another level to you wanting to get involved. It's a game that you get to play. Your guy moves around, you got to fix things, but you also have to be ready to engage in that dialogue when you're in the lobby or whatever that's called. So, like, you don't want to just play Among Us and be like, yeah, that wasn't me, I didn't do it. And everybody's like, no, it was Guffy Bear, we're gonna vote him off. And you're like, all right, whatever. Like, you can't do that. You got to be ready to argue. You got to be ready to toss shade, blame somebody else.
That's why it's a good stream game, right? Though, because there's that level of, like,
sure,
discourse. Yeah,
but you got to be ready for it. You got to be excited.
Yeah, and you can play it up for the sake of the audience.
I think Lucky also plays. I haven't seen him in chat, but yeah, it's been a thought. Get some of my buddies. Get some of the TERA community. Obviously, can't play with anybody that's watching the stream, so you got to put some trust in people. Yeah, I wanted to play Spellbreak last night. I am hardcore for Spellbreak. I've never wanted to play something I'm so bad at so much.
Well, I'm down to keep playing that. And hey, Radio G, I'm absolutely 100% on board to play Among Us. I got to play this thing. I'm so out of touch.
Yeah, Sound Waffles. I would never make the argument that TERA is at the height of tech. It definitely has issues. I remember there's so many bugs that deal with that. Like, what is this? Jaunt. Is it teleport? Jaunt? What's the name of the teleport? Yeah, you would always desync. You push that too many times and you would just watch your guy rubber band. Even on the QA servers, which, I should not have any issue with. Yeah, like the communication was terrible. I understand, I understand the issue. If we could have, I'm sure we would have done something to fix it. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I stream TERA on the TERA channel, 8 p.m. to roughly midnight, Monday through Fridays. You'll see some gameplay. I'm horrible at the game. I haven't played in like a year. I think what I'm trying to do for Monday is have one of the amazing Valk players on the Velica server come teach me how to play as a Valkyrie. If you were here for yesterday's stream, you saw me trying to puzzle this fun contraption that I used.
I didn't know you had one of those.
Yeah,
what's that called? Like a flight deck or something?
That is a Razer Tartarus. Tartarus. It's just a gamepad.
You don't have a Stream Deck? Like, what do they have?
I do have the Stream Deck, the Elgato Stream Deck. I don't do anything with it.
Oh, those are cool.
It is very cool. Anyway, that's it for us tonight. You are all amazing, and if you followed and if you sub to my channel, then it means a great deal to me. I'll eat many more Memos burritos, and
I'll sub when I'm watching next time.
I don't believe it. My children will thank you. I don't have any, but they would if they existed. Maybe an MMO will come along where I'll have children and I'll tell them a story on how you helped me in the dark times. Okay, good night.
Thanks for watching.